Your Honor, my daughter. She's not there anymore. The lights are on but nobody is home. My father's voice cracked perfectly on the last word. I'm Lauren, 34, and from my wheelchair I watched him wipe a tear, looking every bit the devastated parent. To the judge I looked like a broken doll. 3 months of absolute silence, a traumatic brain injury, a helpless woman who needed her daddy to take control of her $4 million estate. But inside I was not broken. I was calculating. Under my blanket, my finger hovered over the play button. He thought he had finally won, but he had no idea he was just finishing digging his own grave. I sat there listening to the man who loosened the bolts on my balcony cry about how much he loved me. Before I played the recording that made him stop crying forever, drop a comment. What is the one unforgivable thing a family member has done to you? I am reading every single one. 3 months before the courtroom, the glass cliff was not a crime scene. It was my masterpiece. I had spent 5 years designing it, a $4 million structure of steel and reinforced glass, cantilevered over the Pacific Ocean. It was transparent, open, and honest. Everything my family was not. I remember the day I finally let them visit. It was a mistake. My father, Stephen, did not look at the ocean view. He walked around tapping the glass walls with his wedding ring, calculating. He did not see a home, he saw equity. My mother, Cynthia, walked through the kitchen, trailing her fingers over the marble like she was inspecting a hotel room she planned to trash. And my sister, Megan, the golden child who had never worked a day in her life, just sat by the infinity pool and asked if the Wi-Fi reached the guest house. They walked through my sanctuary like investors inspecting a distressed asset they planned to liquidate. Then came the night of the fall. I remember the salt air. I remember leaning against the balcony railing to watch the sunset. And I remember the sudden, sickening weightlessness when the steel gave way. There was no sound of snapping metal, no warning creak. Just empty air and the rush of gravity. When I woke up, the world was white and sharp. The smell of antiseptic burned my throat. I tried to move, but my body felt like it was encased in lead. I was in a hospital room. I could hear the steady beep of the monitor and underneath it the low murmur of voices. My parents. My instinct was to call out to them, to cry, to beg for comfort. But something stopped me. A cold, primal instinct whispered, "Stay quiet." So I kept my eyes closed. I slowed my breathing. I played dead. The doctor said the spinal swelling is significant, my mother's voice said. He did not sound scared. He sounded annoyed. If she needs long-term care, that is going to drain the accounts. We get power of attorney the moment she is declared incompetent, my father replied. His voice was calm, businesslike. We can list the house by next month. The market is hot. We take the proceeds as a management fee for her care. What if she wakes up lucid? Megan asked. She fell 20 feet, Megan, my father scoffed. Even if she wakes up, she is going to be foggy. We control the narrative. We tell the judge she is confused. Unstable. Lying there in the dark, listening to them divvy up my life while I was still bleeding, I finally understood. There is a concept in criminal psychology called dehumanization. It is a mental trick predators use to shut off their empathy. To kill or exploit someone without guilt, you have to stop seeing them as a person. You have to strip away their humanity until they are just an object. To Stephen and Cynthia, I was not their daughter. I was not a human being in pain. I was a broken appliance. And since I was broken, they were checking my warranty to see how much cash they could get for the scrap metal. They were not relieved I had survived. They were disappointed I was not dead enough to cash out the insurance, but hurt enough to control. I lay there listening to the arithmetic of their greed, and I made a choice. If they wanted a vegetable, I would give them one. I would be silent. I would be helpless. I would let them think they had won right up until the moment I destroyed them. I did not go back to the glass cliff when they discharged me. I went to a rental property 3 towns over, paid for in cash by a friend who knew better than to ask questions. I needed to disappear. To my parents, I was a confused invalid recovering in a facility. To the world, I was a ghost. But in reality, I was a general gathering ammunition for a war they did not even know had started. The legal assault began 3 days later. It was not subtle. It was a blitzkrieg. The process server found me at the rental. My parents had hired a private investigator to track my phone. He handed me a stack of documents thick enough to choke a horse. I sat on the floor and read them, feeling a cold, hard knot form in my stomach. They were not just filing for conservatorship. They had filed a separate lawsuit claiming constructive trust. The audacity was breathtaking. Stephen was claiming that the architectural designs for the glass cliff, my life's work, my vision, were actually his intellectual property. He claimed I had stolen his sketches and used family funds to build it. It was a lie so bold it was almost impressive. To support it, they had affidavits. One from Megan, my sister, claiming she saw me tracing our father's old blueprints. Another from a corrupt former business partner of mine, likely bought off with the promise of a cut. Then came the financial stranglehold. I tried to buy groceries online and the card was declined. I checked my accounts. Frozen. All of them. An emergency injunction granted by a judge who believed their story about my diminished capacity. They were cutting off my air supply, banking on the fact that a brain-damaged woman with no money cannot hire a defense team. They were right about the money. But they were wrong about the brain damage. I did not panic. Panic is a luxury for people who have safety nets. Instead, I reached for my burner phone and dialed a number I had memorized years ago. Jeffrey. Jeffrey was the contractor who built the glass cliff. He was also the family fixer, the man my father called when permits needed to disappear or inspectors needed to look the other way. He was a man who knew where all the bodies were buried because he usually held the shovel. Meet me, I said when he answered. The old quarry. Midnight. He did not ask who it was. He knew. The quarry was silent, the air thick with the smell of wet stone and pine. Jeffrey was waiting in his truck, the engine running. When I wheeled myself into the light, he looked like he had seen a phantom. He was a big man, rough hands and a hard face, but he was shaking. I thought you were vegetable, he whispered, stepping out of the truck. Your dad said you were gone. Mentally gone. He lied, I said. Just like he lied about the railing, Jeffrey. He flinched. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a heavy cloth rag. He walked over and placed it in my lap like it was a bomb. I was supposed to testify, he said, his voice cracking. Stephen told me if I didn't say the construction was faulty due to your design, he would ruin me. He told me to get rid of the evidence. To replace the hardware before the insurance adjusters came. I unfolded the cloth. Inside was a heavy steel bolt. The bolt that had secured the glass railing to the steel frame. The bolt that had failed. I took it out, Jeffrey said. I was going to throw it in the ocean. But then I looked at it. I lifted the bolt. It was sheared clean in the middle. It wasn't rust, Jeffrey said, tears welling in his eyes. And it wasn't a manufacturing defect. Look at the striations, Lauren. That isn't a break. That is a cut. I ran my thumb over the metal. It was smooth, precise. Someone had taken a hacksaw to the high-tensile steel, sawing it 3/4 of the way through, leaving just enough metal to hold the glass up until I, leaned against it. He told me to use cheap materials, Jeffrey choked out. I thought he just wanted to skim the budget. I didn't know he was setting a trap. I didn't know he was trying to kill you. I closed my hand around the cold steel. The realization hit me with the force of the pavement I had landed on. This was not negligence. This was not just greed. My parents had not just waited for an accident. They had engineered an execution. I sat on the floor of the rental holding the cold steel bolt until it warmed against my palm. Jeffrey was right. This was a cut, not a break. But in a court of law, a piece of metal is just a piece of metal. My father would claim Jeffrey was a rogue contractor, incompetent and bitter, trying to shift the blame for his own shoddy workmanship onto a grieving family. They would destroy Jeffrey's reputation to save their own skins. I needed more than a weapon. I needed a confession. I looked at my laptop. My parents had frozen my bank accounts, but they had forgotten something crucial. They were trying to steal a house they did not understand. The glass cliff was not just steel and stone. It was a machine. When I designed it, I was obsessed with acoustics. I wanted the sound of the ocean to filter through the halls perfectly, so I had installed high-fidelity audio sensors in every exterior zone to monitor wind noise and adjust the automated baffles. The house was always listening. I opened my laptop and logged into the cloud server. My hands were steady, moving with the precision of a surgeon. I bypassed the user interface and went straight to the raw data logs. I scrolled back through 3 months of silence until I found the date. The night of the accident. The file was massive. Audio stream, West Terrace. I put on my noise-canceling headphones. I turned off the lights in the rental until the only thing in the room was the glow of the screen and the sound of the wind coming through the speakers. I pressed play. At first, there was just the rhythmic crashing of the waves against the cliffside. Then the sound of a sliding glass door opening. Footsteps. The heavy, confident tread of my father. The sharp, clicking heels of my mother. It is too windy out here, Stephen, my mother's voice cut through the static. She sounded impatient, not admiring the view. It has to be tonight, my father said. His voice was low, but the high-gain sensors picked up every vibration. The policy lapses next month if we don't make the premium payment. We are out of time. I stopped the recording. I sat in the dark, breathing hard. Policy. What policy? I rewound and played it again. Jeffrey did it, my mother asked. You are sure? He sawed it 3/4 through, Stephen replied. I checked it myself while she was in the bathroom. It looks solid, but if she leans on it, gravity does the rest. I felt a wave of nausea so violent I had to close my eyes. They were discussing my murder with the casual tone of a couple deciding on dinner. And the payout? Cynthia asked. Verify the numbers again. Basic life is $2.5 million, Stephen said. But the accidental death rider. If she dies on the property due to a structural failure, it doubles. $5 million, Cynthia. That covers the bank loan, the liens, and Megan's mess in Vegas. Megan. My sister. The golden child with the gambling addiction I was never supposed to know about. They weren't just killing me for their own debts. They were killing me to bail out the sister who had never worked a day in her life. $5 million, my mother mused. There was no horror in her voice. Only relief. That cleans the slate. Just make sure she goes out there. Get her to toast the sunset. She trusts me, my father said. She is desperate for my approval. If I ask her to show me the view, she will walk right off the edge. I tore the headphones off, the silence crashing over me. On the screen, the audio waveform confirmed the unthinkable. My parents had plotted to liquidate my life like an asset. I wasn't a daughter to them. I was a $5 million payout. This wasn't a toxic family dynamic anymore. It was attempted murder. The shock slowly hardened into clarity. If they wanted to prove I was incompetent, I would show them exactly how wrong they were. I saved the recording, backed it up everywhere I could, and sent it straight to my lawyer. The courtroom pulled me back to the present. My parents sat performing grief while the judge prepared to grant them an emergency conservatorship. This was their moment, until I rolled forward in my wheelchair. For 90 days I'd said nothing, letting them believe I was broken. Playing dead the way prey fools a predator. But my silence had been strategy. I am not confused, Your Honor, I said. And I am not brain damaged. I've spent 3 months listening to my parents forge records, steal my assets, and plan my death. I connected my phone to the court's audio system. Their voices filled the room, discussing insurance, timing, the sabotaged railing. The mask fell from my father's face. My mother paled. Megan cracked completely, confessing her part in their lies as the bailiffs dragged Dad away. 6 months later, they're awaiting trial for fraud and attempted murder. Megan is in federal custody. The life they tried to steal from me is finally my own. I rebuilt my home, my support system, and my peace, starting with a new steel balcony railing that will never fail. People say I should forgive them because they're my parents. But DNA isn't a life sentence. Cutting them off wasn't cruelty, it was survival. I didn't lose a family, I made room for a better one. And standing on that balcony steady beneath me, I finally feel whole.